So can Disney release a great movie this year despite all the box office disappointments that they've had? That was the question in my mind going in to see The Creator, which is a brand new sci-fi action epic from Gareth Edwards, the director of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And it has a lot of similarities with that movie in that this is a sci-fi action movie that is predominantly a war movie with a bit more grit to it. This is a movie about a war between humanity and robots. And overall, I really appreciate that this is an original story, that it's not a sequel, that it's not a remake, that it's not trying to jumpstart a new franchise, it doesn't have a cliffhanger ending, it doesn't have a post-credit scene, it doesn't have any sequel bait. This is a full, complete story, and in today's day and age, I really appreciate that. And I really think that this is one of the most visually stunning sci-fi movies I've seen in a long time, if not ever. And the fact that it's an $80 million budget as opposed to Disney's new average, which seems to be $250 million, it's really impressive for how much they spent on it. And I think that it's a film that if you're a sci-fi person and you appreciate just being whisked away into a far off future, that you appreciate the aesthetics of sci-fi, you're gonna like it just for that. It is worth seeing just to see the visuals alone, but of course a story cannot stand only on its visuals, and my opinion on the plotline is a bit more mixed, although in the end I do enjoy the film and I did appreciate going to see it and definitely enjoyed watching it. But it's one of those things where once you think about the story a little more, it starts to fall apart. There's a bit more holes in it the more you think about it. But it definitely feels emotionally satisfying while you're watching it. But there are several moments, some of the decisions that the character makes that I think you're either going to accept or not. It's going to be binary, and if you reject those things, you're not going to like how it ends. But there's still a lot to appreciate in this movie. I especially appreciate the retro future aesthetic. It seems to be all the rage now with Starfield that just came out, the video game, and this has a similar look to it in that it's kind of fusing old style retro, NASA uniforms and how that looks, kind of the blocky, angular style, with a more like Star Wars-y kind of look. A lot of the robots kind of look straight out of Star Wars, with a little bit of sci-fi modern edge as well. It starts off with a really interesting sequence that really establishes the retro future style right away, where we see clips from the 1960s where there's a world of tomorrow. A lot of the sci-fi hypothetical things that we saw from sci-fi back then, except these were actually fully realized. So we see robot servants doing chores in the house, and I really like that opening scene. It really establishes the tone right away. But this culminates in a nuclear bomb being set off in Los Angeles, and that kind of sparks this war where AI is banned by the United States, and then there's a war between East and West, where the East is still trying to incorporate AI into their economy and their way of living, while the US is waging all-out war against it. So that's the premise of the movie. And we have our main character who is tasked with going to find a weapon that has been designed that is supposed to be able to take down Nomad, which is the big ship you see in the poster that can shoot missiles and lasers from the sky. It's kind of the big weapon that the US has in trying to defeat the robots. So this soldier ends up finding the weapon, and it turns out to be a robot child. Kind of a human robot hybrid in a way, in the sense that this child will grow. So I suppose in a way it has kind of a biological component in that it doesn't just come fully formed as an adult. It has to age over time. So an interesting concept there. And this child is the weapon. This child has some abilities to control electronics around it, so it can shut things down, and she can also turn things on. So, and a lot of the story hinges on the main character named Joshua. He had a past where he had a wife, and he was undercover trying to find the creator, who was sort of revered as a god by the robots. So he's undercover. There ends up being a raid on the town where he is undercover, and his wife ends up being blown up in the attack. So he is persuaded by the military to join this mission to find the weapon by being shown footage of his wife alive, and he sets out to find her. He doesn't care so much about the mission as he does about finding his wife. That is his main motivation throughout the film. So it's a solid premise. We got some good action. We got some great visuals. There's a lot going for this movie. And they're trying to make the emotional connection between Joshua and the child the thing that really sets this film apart. That's the thing you're supposed to really be invested in. Overall, I think they did well with those story beats, getting you invested in the child, wanting to keep the child alive. And the main point that the movie's trying to make is that maybe the AI isn't so different from us after all. So along the way, there are a lot of little nitpicky things that I would point out. There's a lot of coincidences in the movie, and there are a lot of things that aren't necessarily explained as well as they should be. There's a couple instances, for example, where animals seem to be doing the bidding of robots, and it was weird. You know, there's like a monkey that picks up a detonator and instantly knows to press the button. Those things aren't really explained. I thought it was going to end up being that it was a robot monkey, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So there's a couple weird things like that along the way, and there are definitely moments where characters make decisions that don't necessarily make sense. And also, I thought that they didn't necessarily make the robots as distinct from humans as they should be. I felt like they were really just acting exactly like humans. There was almost no difference at all. They even missed a lot of shots, whereas I felt like robots should be more accurate. There was a moment in the movie where the main character is pinned down. 3 robots have lasers pointed at him, and he manages to get the upper hand on them. And I just felt like robots should be a little bit less prone to error. The robots are also smoking and drinking, and they even like swear and act like people. I suppose you could say that that's supposed to be emblematic of how AI are like a machine learning algorithm, and that they can mimic what the people do. But I think that premise falls apart when, I suppose, minor spoiler alert, really the humans end up being the bad guys in this movie, specifically the US military. They end up being depicted as ruthless. They're killing civilians, they're doing shady things, and they seem to be lying to a lot of their people about stuff. And throughout the movie, they're trying to get the main character to turn to the robot side, and they're trying to get the audience along the way. But with this premise of the robots acting an awful lot like humans, they even have spirituality and a religion involved. It really seems like they should be mimicking the violence of the humans as well. Now I think we're going to go a bit more into spoilers. I'll try to be a little vague about it, but if you want to see the movie, maybe come back later. But I had mixed feelings when the main character ends up flipping sides at the end. He makes a decision regarding his wife that I felt was a little out of character. He spent this whole movie trying to find her, and then he does something that I felt like he wouldn't have done. And a lot of his conversion hinges on one robot soldier telling him, oh, the nuclear bomb was a programming error by humans, and really we just want to live in peace. And I get all that, but it's kind of hard for me to just accept that at face value with no further information. But the movie kind of requires that in order for you to be fully invested. I'm definitely on board with, you know, having robots that are sympathetic, you know, like Data on Star Trek. I always love that episode, The Measure of a Man, where we're debating whether or not the robot is in fact a life unto itself. I love that debate, but we don't really get that deep in that space in this movie. I think it would have been stronger if the robots were a little bit less human and they had their own culture and characteristics, but really it just seems to be embodying human ways. There isn't really a lot of difference other than the fact that robots cannot reproduce like humans can. So really a lot of this could have been alleviated by a little bit more explanation, explaining why the robots are the way that they are, how the artificial intelligence works. But there wasn't really as much discussion about the essence of a living thing, whether or not they have souls, that kind of thing. And really, it's just as simple as making the humans look bad by making them do bad stuff, and making the robots good by comparison, because they won't even shoot somebody who's unarmed. There seems to be maybe some programming that they're not allowed to hurt people, except under specific circumstances of self-defense. But I would have liked to see that spelled out a bit more. And really, this kid has the ability to control technology, which really could be a dangerous thing. And yes, I'm on board with keeping the kid alive, but there wasn't really any thought about the potential that this kid has to really wreak a lot of havoc. You know, shutting down the technology in an entire city could be devastating. People could lose their lives as a result of that. This kid is benevolent. She wants to do the right thing. She wants to be good. We don't know once this child grows up if maybe they're going to hate humanity and resent them for the things that they've done. So there's definitely an argument for containing this potential threat that I felt like wasn't really discussed, and it's a little bit more black and white than I was hoping for. And we could have seen a little bit more of the humans' motivations. Maybe they just wanted AI for themselves and they were trying to keep it contained, whereas they were portraying to the public that they want to wipe them out completely. If we got a little bit more into the weeds with what the humans really want, it could have had a bit more depth to it. But really, that's the make or break moment. Do you buy into the ending? The character Joshua going over to the robot side and just humans are completely evil. But there is a satisfying ending, and I do feel like the payoff between the young child and the main character Joshua was particularly strong. The child actor did a very good job, as well as John David Washington. I think the acting was pretty good across the board. There's just those little nitpicky things, the coincidences, the strange unexplained things, the fact that like the robots have a switch that they can turn off, the robots need to sleep. There's just a lot of weird things that I don't think that robots would do. And there's a little bit of confusion with the character motivations. It kind of feels like the main character really does act selfishly. He's mostly acting out of trying to find his wife than he is concerned about anything else. But he ends up having a heroic moment at the end, even though, you know, spoiler alert, when he blows the ship up, it could potentially land in a populated area, but they try to show, you know, people evacuating from the ship to make it a heroic act. So all in all, I really enjoyed watching this movie. I would give it a 7 out of 10. Walking out of the theater, I felt a little bit more positive about it. But the more you think about it, the more you unpack it, the more problems reveal themselves. So it's a good movie, and I would recommend it, especially if you're the type of person that just wants to see cool sci-fi action and you can ignore some of those things. If you're not a nitpicker like myself, you'll probably enjoy it more than I did. But I really still would recommend this movie to sci-fi fans. Let me know what you guys think about this movie in the comments section. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.